I'm Marshall Kosloff, and this is Arsenal of Democracy.
Never before has our American civilization been in such danger as now. Danger against which we must prepare. But we well know that we cannot escape danger by crawling into bed and pulling the covers over our heads. We must be the great arsenal of democracy.
As we enter into the second term of the Trump administration, all eyes are turning to Eastern and Central Europe. On the show, we've previously covered the region via politics and, of course, the military defense side of the picture. But for today's episode, I'm joined by Jan Ruzicka, who is the Chief External Affairs Officer for the PPF Group. And in our conversation, we are focused on the economic and business side of the region and what that conversation as power at a special economic level and dynamism shifts from Western towards Central and Eastern Europe, how these dynamics should shape the American approach to the region, and how we can understand what the future looks like.
Communism is real, and if there is a communist oversight over critical technologies like 5G networks, cybersecurity, or autonomous vehicle, it's a problem. And yes, I would love to live in the world of globalization. I admire generation before us. I already mentioned Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton. They lived in beautiful world of Western liberal order. But this is unfortunately gone. Cleavages in the world are upon us. And whether we like it or not, it's a little bit like us and them. We didn't pick this. But now we need to be with our friends and allies in critical technologies.
Hope you all enjoy the conversation, and a huge thank you to the Hudson Institute for supporting the work of this podcast. Jan Ruzicka, welcome to Arsenal of Democracy.
It's great being here. Thanks for inviting.
Yeah, so many different things to talk about. So I'm excited to hear that you're going to be at Hudson the week of this episode's release. So there'll be plenty of things for folks to follow up on if they're interested in this story. But let's just start by introducing you, your work, your context, like the type of work you're involved in when it comes to Central and Eastern Europe.
I am saying hi from Prague, Czech Republic, a small country in the middle of Europe. West from us is Germany, South Austria, North Poland, and East Hungary and Slovakia. We are 10 million nation, staunch ally of United States and NATO and European Union. So we are members of both. We believe in NATO. We believe that we need to get stronger together. We pay our 2% GDP on military spending and NATO, so we hopefully are in good graces with your newly elected president, unlike many others. So army is quite popular in the country here. I'm army reservist myself. That's why also the Ukraine cause is a big thing here. Because in 20th century, Czech Republic, or formerly known Czechoslovakia, I know that in US, Czechoslovakia is still a label, we were occupied, not only by Nazis and Adolf Hitler during Second World War, but after by Soviets. So Russia is not, big army. It's not our big friend. We're similar to Poland or Baltic countries. We are worried and afraid. And that's why we understand that the buffer zone happening now in Eastern Ukraine, this big fight, is also our fight. As I said, I am from Prague, Czech Republic. I work as a senior manager, member of senior management of a company called PPF Group. It's largest investment company in a region, 60,000 employees, $40 billion, investing in media, telecommunication, e-commerce, and also heavy machinery. So this is our region also for business. We are big in Poland, we are big in Germany, but also in fragile countries like Moldova. Or we are one of the few still having operations in Ukraine. And I'm not talking about Kiev or Lviv, the western part, but we are in Dnipro, very close to the battlefront. So for us, being family-owned, conservative company, friend of US and Europe, we believe we need to, return something. And that's why we are also happy sponsor, partner, donor to Hudson Institute, because we believe we need to work in this region, that Central and Eastern Europe matter. We are very grateful to people like Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton, but also Henry Kissinger and others, that we are now part of Euro and the NATO family, and we believe that this game needs to be finished. That's why Moldova, that's why Balkan 6, even Ukraine are part of the Western corridor, and we are trying to support as much as possible in a business and also in thought leadership.
Yeah, and I'd like you to really discuss this idea of this buffer, because what we're trying to do here at this podcast is give folks a mental model for understanding the changing landscape of Europe going into 2025. Explain what it means to be a buffer in the context of 2025.
So if you look on a map, so there are countries that were always part of Western orbit. By the way, Czech Republic, or formerly known before Czechoslovakia, Bohemia. So being Bohemian, this is Bohemia Kingdom. We always been part of Holy Roman Empire. We drink beer like Bavarians. Our national dish is Wiener Schnitzel. We were part of electorate, so Czech king elected Holy Roman Emperor. So we are good to go. We were Christianized from Regensburg, Germany, so Roman Catholics. So we are the last piece of the West here. Let's not forget that Prague is more Western than, for example, Vienna. But then 20th century happened. And in 20th century, we become this buffer zone, first under Austrian-Hungarian Empire, then Nazis, and then Iron Curtain. So Baltic countries, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Yugoslavia, we became part of Eastern Empire of Soviet Union, Joseph Stalin. We didn't like it. We were occupied, similar to Poland. A lot of political prisoners, a lot of people who ended in a gallows. This is what happened, and that's why we don't take our liberties lightly. In 1989 and more 1991, after fall of Soviet Union, we were very grateful to Ronald Reagan and Bush Sr. that we are becoming again part of the West, but it's fragile. We've been part of it centuries ago, then we lost it for 100 years, and we see now with Russia coming back, Chinese hybrid operations again very active. We see disinformation campaigns. We see cybersecurity threats, that we are again part of the battlefield. Fortunately for us, and this is what we are trying to explain, the people here in Central Europe. Central Europe means Poland, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Austria. That we are lucky and fortunate that battlefield is now more east, Ukraine, especially Ukraine or Moldova. And Ukrainians are paying heavy bloody price for our freedoms on a battlefield. But for us here in Central Europe, it's obvious that if Ukraine fall, then we are next to go. It's all the messaging from Kremlin, from Putin. Hey, this is our former lands. This is our empire. We are coming for you.
I'd love to hear more about the Chinese hybrid warfare. Folks will obviously, especially if they're consuming Hudson products, know all about the kinetic version of Russian expansionism. But what's the Chinese hybrid warfare look like in this picture?
I don't want to be hypocritical. Like everyone else, we were doing our business in China. Me personally, I lived in Beijing for 2 years, then I lived in Hong Kong. I have only good words for Chinese entrepreneurs, techies, guys like Jack Ma from Alibaba and Pony Ma from Tencent. Their cars, electric vehicles, they are maybe the same quality like Tesla, maybe even better and cheaper. Their 5G network by Huawei, it's cheaper and better than Ericsson. This is true. But at the end, communism is real. This is the battle. This is the main line. It's not about Beijing versus Washington. We as a country, Czechoslovakia, we lived under communism. My father doesn't have a high school because communists didn't allow to Roman Catholics to have open Roman Catholics to have high school. So I have it in my family. So I have it. I believe very, very much in this. Communism is real, and if there is a communist oversight over critical technologies like 5G networks, cybersecurity, or autonomous vehicle, it's a problem. And yes, I would love to live in the world of globalization. I admire generation before us. I already mentioned Madeleine Albright, Bill Clinton. They lived in beautiful world of Western liberal order. I would like it to be forever. And on the wave of this Western liberal order, we were, as a company, very successful, even in Russia, China. But this is unfortunately gone. Deglobalization is upon us. Cleavages in the world are upon us. And whether we like it or not, it's a little bit like us and them. We didn't pick this. But now we need to be with our friends and allies in critical technologies. And European Union, European Commission, and Ursula von der Leyen, as a head of the Commission, she rightly pointed out that yes, in some areas we can be friends with China, but in other areas we are opponents or even enemies. So I think in critical technologies, it's good to be with our own, even though it's more expensive. And yes, we are a little bit lagging behind. And this is our homework now, both United States and Europe and Pacific allies like Australia or Korea or Japan, that we need to get our, I don't want to say get our shit together, but we need to get better. We need to invest more in these critical technologies because, again, Chinese are great.
Something I'm really curious about, one of the big stories of the 20th century, big stories of the 21st century, especially during the lead up to the Iraq War, was the transition or just sort of movement of power, or even the way you tell the European story, eastwards. That kind of took a pause during the 2010s after the 2008 financial crisis for a variety of reasons. But in the 2020s, there's a lot of focus on this story. Now, we could tell this story on two different levels. So one would just basically be geopolitical, events, warfare, Russian revanchism, but you're also coming to this from a business perspective. I'd love for you to sort of tell the business side of that story, which is a little different related to, though, the geopolitical one.
Actually, I think it's a little bit connected, and it's about doing your homework right. Mm-hmm. Why Chinese have a great 5G networks? Because they invested into it. It was a national strategy and also private strategy, yes. They commanded a lot of money to be the best. Why US is the great in big tech? It was not only the great geniuses of Silicon Valley, but let's be open, also governmental subsidies. Mr. Musk doesn't want to talk about it now. He's based in Texas like you, but SpaceX, a lot of American taxpayers' money. Here in Europe, we lived last 20, maybe even 30 years we got happy holidays. Soviet Union no more. China was big friend under previous Chinese presidents. US Army, they're still covering us. Ramstein base in Germany, big bases in Italy. So we didn't need to invest into our security. Mr. Rutte, who is now Secretary General of NATO, he was a Prime Minister of Netherlands for 14 years. Not a single time he paid 2% GDP on military spending. So we lived in a happy era, similar to energy. European, especially Western European energy security was all Gazprom, all Russia. And we were selling our stuff, our goods, our gadgets to Chinese. So this is especially German model. Here in Central Eastern Europe, we couldn't afford this happy holidays, not only because, we got our experience with East, but also we were poor. And we believe in capitalism. And if you are poor, you want to get rich. It's super simple. And you are trying to get models, ways how to, be well off, wealthy, rich. So I would say 10, 15 years ago, in so different countries like Romania, Poland, or Croatia, if you look again on a map, very different geographies, also national feelings, cultures, they try to get better. Romanians, okay, we are a large country, 20 million people. 20 million people in Europe is a lot. So Romania is the sixth largest country among 27 European country member family. So we have 20 million people. We are poor. We don't have high wages, but we have good engineers and craftsmen. So let's welcome all the an engineering, heavy machinery, automotive company in the world. Come to Romania. Build factories here. Everybody will be happy. We need work for our people. You will get skilled and cheap labor force. That's a business operating model that is working extremely well for Romania, and Romania is going to the skies with their GDP also compounded. Second model, Croatia. Croatia, it's a small country, less than 5 million people, but very beautiful. Even American tourists like Croatian, Dalmatian coast very, very much. Okay, we want to be integrated with the West as much as possible. Schengen, Euro, NATO, European membership. Just 10 years. 10 years ago, there was no Croatia in Europe. Now all in, even more in Czech Republic, for example, because they are bidding on a fact. We want Western tourists, Germans, Irish, Americans, and so on. And then Poland, largest country, 40 million people, fifth largest country in Europe. Defense, heavy machinery. Let's welcome American investors. So I would say these local homeworks help these poorer countries get better. Western Europeans, they didn't need it. Paris is beautiful. You don't need second Paris. If London is there, London is beautiful. So I would say it's normal Maslow pyramid. And for your American listeners and viewers, I think that what we have in Central Europe and Eastern Europe is this sort of pioneering feeling. It's a little bit like Wild West of the 19th century. I am poor. There is a land of the free. Let's create capitalism because we got communism and a socialism in our countries. We don't want it. Let's make a big buck. Let's make pretty penny. So this is the main difference. I do believe it. Nothing else. Entitlement of Western Europeans, we call it now these first world problems. If you look at what's happening in UK universities or French universities, it's not about to get better or create great startup. It's about debating gender, debating progressive values, nothing against it. But if you are poor, you don't have a time for it. You want to get better. That's the main difference. And also the proximity to the East. Last word here, Poland, not Germany, nor France, nor United Kingdom, big ally of US, but Poland very soon will have by far the largest army in Europe. They are now spending more than 4% GDP on defense. They are major partner of Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or Boeing, but also Koreans. Only because Americans are not able to provide so many products. So that's why also now they need Koreans. So very, very soon, key ally of US military won't be Ramstein base. It's going to be Poland and Romania.
Something I'd love to hear from you more on, and you've hinted at this when you focused on the innovation and business opportunities in Central and Eastern Europe. Can you talk about the broader European story when it comes to technology and innovation? Because if you talk to a lot of folks, especially within the startup and entrepreneurship community, venture capital within the United States, they have a very pessimistic picture of Europe broadly and the EU broadly. Can you speak to this story? Also, just focusing on Western Europe as well, too.
So what's the main problem of whole Europe? And what's the main advantage of United States of America? Capital markets. So if you create good startup, and it doesn't matter whether it's Estonia or Portugal, if you get over a certain threshold and you need cheap funding, and it needs to be risk funding, it's still startup. It's not General Motors. So you need to have adventurous capital. you always go to United States because we have a small capital market. So there is no European capital market. There is no NISE of Europe. There is no Nasdaq of Europe. There is teeny tiny stock exchange in Portugal and teeny tiny stock exchange in Estonia. And yes, a little bit larger in Germany, but it's not connected. And secondly, European people, European money, retail, we don't like putting our money on stock exchange. So you, Marshall, you from Austin, Texas, if you want to save for your retirement, you go to on a stock exchange. In Europe, we buy a house and we buy second house and third house. So it's very different. So there is not enough capital for technology company. So we always go to United States. So that's first difference. Second, again, this entrepreneurial spirit. What are two largest companies by capitalization in Europe? Number one is Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, LVMH. So good champagne and luxury bags. What's the second largest company by capitalization? Novo Nordisk, famous Danish company, created insulin. Sometimes there is an anecdotal saying, what's European companies about? We are selling handbags to Chinese and insulin to Americans who like McDonald's and KFC too much.
We could probably add Ozempic to that as well too. So that's the picture is really full here.
But this is real problem in Western Europe. So capital, again, entitlement. So the companies are here different. And then third one, if you are young European entrepreneur in capitals, and you go from university, where US startups are coming from Stanford or Harvard, Princeton, and so on. So there is good base in US universities that support students to go into business. And yes, maybe they won't finish their title and their masters because they are already creating Facebook, like Mark Zuckerberg, but it's supported. European academic field, and I am I'm product of Cambridge, United Kingdom. We are more old-fashioned academicians. So we like our Latin and Greek, and we like our evening prayers. The connection to business is much lower, and sometimes European universities, they even detest the fact that they shall be more entrepreneurial. So it's not supported. Again, where these new startups are coming from outskirts. Estonia is number one capital of European Union. Yes, there is London, but UK is outside Europe. But if you think about Spotify as a big business, it's Estonia. If you think about startups in defense, we are talking about Finland or Austria. When you think about Americans going Europe, they go Poland these days. And not only techies, but even big buck. So Apollo, BlackRock, Blackstone, CVC, all of Advent, all of these guys have big base now in Warsaw. Not only about Central and Eastern Europe, but also going now to Ukraine and maybe farther. So this is the dynamics. But to wrap it up, not enough capital and zero capital union in Europe, connected to the fact that we Europeans, we don't invest our money on a stock exchange. So there is not enough capital, risk capital, adventurous capital. Secondly, entitlement. Again, if you are producing champagne, why to go to risky business? Champagne will be here forever. And a third one, universities. Universities are not supporting tech, startups, and business atmosphere enough.
Something I'd be curious about, given your travels and given the vast regional scope we're covering in this conversation, I'd love for you to articulate the mood of Central and Eastern Europe as we go into 2025 with the new Trump administration.
It's not only me who will say it, it's Political, Financial Times, and so on. Probably Central and Eastern Europe is best prepared for Trump. Not only because first Trump wife was from Czech Republic, Ivana Trump. By the way, Ivanka Trump and Don and Eric, they still speak Czech. my language. Their grandmother from Czech Republic is still alive. Also, current Trump wife is from a region, from Slovenia. So there is a personal connectivity, and we know that for President Trump, this is important. This personal stories, personal touch is important. Secondly, Central and Eastern Europe, they know how to talk Trump directly. We are not worried about bilateral diplomacy. Countries, and now, yes, it's not only about Viktor Orban and Hungary, who bet big time on MAGA, all these CPACs and Viktor Orban and Hungarians going strong behind Trump, but also, for example, Poles. President of Poland, Duda, is a personal friend of Trump for years. There are countries like Romania, Klaus Iohannis, president of Romania, again, being in very, very good graces with Trump. And finally, us, Czech Republic. Czech Republic now has a conservative government, also a liberal conservative president. Our president of Czech Republic was 4-star general. And this is something what Trump likes. And our prime minister is a staunch conservative, member of European Conservative Party. So not EPP, not German CDU, but more right-wing. Mm-hmm. So this is helping us. All leaders from Central and Eastern Europe, they already have their one-on-one conf calls with Trump, including Czech Prime Minister, very successful conf call last week. So I think that we are positioned for this bilateralism, which Trump likes. If we read Art of the Deal is about these bilateral barters, very aggressive from Trump. I think this is his negotiating strategy. I don't think that he wants to go fully out of NATO. It's like he negotiated with an iron fist, and he see what will happen next. It's a little bit like Medici diplomacy in Renaissance. Mm-hmm. Princes talking together. Specifically in trade and internal market, this is going to be tricky because inside European laws and regulation, sole ownership of trade is Brussels, not Prague, not Warsaw, not Hungary. It's Brussels. But of course, for Trump, will be easier to do divide and conquer. But is Central Eastern Europe, I would say, unprepared? No. Not unprepared, and we are building ties with Mar-a-Lago. We are building ties with upcoming Republican administration.
Something I'm very curious about, you've done a great job of shouting out the fact that most of the Central and Eastern European countries we've discussed are meeting their 2% of GDP commitments that come attached to NATO. And obviously the recommendation that anyone could sort of hold is that countries that value the NATO relationship, value the fact and understand the fact that President Trump has been very critical of the institution, they need to meet those GDP percent numbers. But obviously this is about more than just that. I think that if magically we could snap our fingers and everyone's hitting 2 to 4%, that wouldn't just fix the strained relationship that many people in the United States have with the institution. What is your broader advice for how we should think about that dynamic?
So you are absolutely right that in current geopolitical environment, 2% is absolute minimum. By the way, and it's not being written enough about. This 2%, this is not military spending per se, tanks and ammos or F-35 fighter jets. It's also, for example, military pensions. Mm-hmm. So it's much broader. So now I think it's not enough. I think there will be debate. So that's one thing. I think the countries that are not spending enough, Germany or Netherlands, I think that President Trump will look on them very, very closely, and it's going to be very tough debate. Secondly, and this is, again, what we need to understand as Europeans, and I think I'm quite happy that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were, on what I will say now, they were saying the similar stuff like Joe Biden or Elbridge Colby or J.D. Vance, that for US is now the Pacific is a theater, not Europe. And we Europeans, we are hesitant to join forces with United States in Pacific. Mm-hmm. And then this will be barter again. If we Europeans, we care very much about Russia, some of them care very much about Israel. For example, Czech Republic always vote with United States or even more than the UK. So now I think in United Nations it's US, Czechia, and maybe Tuvalu supporting Israel every time. Czech Prime Minister doesn't support ICC court order on Benjamin Netanyahu. So, but this is our spiel. Russia, this is ours. And we want you, United States, by our side. And we Europeans, we need to understand that priority of US is somewhere else. And yes, we don't have career strike groups and we don't have space force, but doing our at least little bit by joining US, I think this is happening, and this is going to be second task from President Trump administration after 2% GDP will be what you are going to do for me. And me, I mean, my task is now China, now task is Korea and Japan. So how you will help me? If you want my help in Europe, I want your help in Asia. And we Europeans, we shall prepare for this.
So for the last big question here, you helpfully highlighted the fact that the globalization story that really undergirded your and my childhoods and our understandings of this world is now over, but it's easy to lean too far in the other direction and just say that things just aren't interconnected at all. That would be doing too much the other direction. So something that I know you've put a lot of thought into is the role that Central and Eastern Europe does play when it comes to broader challenges that everyone shares, everything from migration to technology, innovation, connectivity at a digital level and at a physical, logistical level. Speak to those dynamics, how we could look at Central and Eastern Europe as a place where we could start to see broader solutions to broader challenges.
So one thing where Trump administration see very much eye to eye with Central and Eastern Europe, we don't do migration here. And I mean it with exclamation point. So in 2015, when Angela Merkel, previous German chancellor, were opening the doors of Europe for migrants from Horn of Africa, Maghreb, and Central Asia, including Afghanistan, Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary said, Romania and others, big no. And Angela and French president, previous one, and Brussels, they were very much against Central Europe. You are xenophobic, you are not helping people in need. And we said, hey, look, it's not about that. We want to help, but these people are different from us. And to integrate them, it's going to be extreme problem. And now we see it in Germany. We see it in Netherlands. We see it in Scandinavia. This huge migration problem, how to integrate people. And it's not about xenophobic. When Eastern Christians from Ukraine flooded the region, so currently Czech Republic has highest number of refugees per capita. And Ukrainians integrate beautifully because they are similar to us. So this is one big, I would say, learning from Western Europeans. Migration is a real problem. It won't go anywhere if we as a mainstream politics, whether conservatives or socialists, if we won't embrace it, then extremists will. And we see it in France, we see it in rise of fascists in Germany, and Netherlands as well. So that's first, I would say, big learning for outside Central Eastern Europe. Second big learning, do your homework. Nobody else will do the homework for you. We believe, being formally communists and by definition very, very poor, we don't want to lose our capitalist freedoms. We want to make good product and services. We understand that we are small, but as a region, we are 1/3 of European Union. And this the market that matters. We don't try to market Czech Republic. It's too small. But as a region, with high GDP growth, Romania, Poland, Croatia, 3-4%, it's much better. It's similar to US with much lower wages. So that's second thing. Do your homework, including defense. I have few friends in, let's say, MAGA circles. And what I like to hear now after elections, America first doesn't mean America alone. But that means we need to be prepared to join forces. It won't be free lunch. And this is another thing that we are trying to tell our Western European friends. Free lunch is over. It was great 30 years of liberal order, liberal capitalist order, this end of history, famous book by Fukuyama back from the 90s, it's gone. And nothing in the world is forever. So we are trying to accustom the same Czech Republic. We didn't have a large army 10 years ago. Now we are building it, F-35s included. And we need to get ready for things that, future will bring for us.
That is an excellent place to end. Jan, thank you so much for joining me on Arsenal of Democracy.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit subscribe below so you don't miss any episodes of Arsenal of Democracy. If you'd like to learn more about the topics covered on this episode, or just are interested in broader content on U.S. foreign and domestic policy, be sure to go to hudson.org. See you soon.